G'day, that safety guy here. Take two. All right, so supervisors, foremen, superintendents, project owners, just because that government enforcement official, in the case of Ontario, the Ministry of Labour, just because they show up on your site and don't make mention of things like workers not wearing high vis or not wearing their hard hats, not being anchored in elevated work platforms, doesn't mean that you don't have to comply to the law. Okay? Case in point, on a site yesterday, it's actually an indoor site, it's a huge warehouse, and it's inside, and it's really warm. All right, so no one's wearing high-vis garments. In Ontario anyway, it's stated in 3 spots in our regulations where a worker shall wear a high-vis garment. And one of them is if that worker has the potential to come in contact with vehicular traffic. If you look at the definition of a vehicle in our regulations, it states that it's a motorized, propelled by a motor. So that it doesn't specify what type. So a forklift is a vehicle. An elevated work platform is technically, legally, a vehicle. A worker's van is definitely a vehicle. So the high-vis garment does not have to be a vest. Doesn't have to be the big jacket. You can wear the high-vis, the t-shirts, the long-sleeve shirts, the hooded jacket, whatever, okay? But just because the ministry didn't, or that government official didn't mention it, doesn't mean that you don't have to comply with it. Just because the Ministry of Labour didn't say anything about that bricklayer not wearing a hard hat under the scaffold inside, doesn't mean that it's still not a law. Just because you pass a cop and he doesn't pull you over for speeding, doesn't mean that speeding is legal all of a sudden. Okay? So instead of being argumentative, all right, do what you need to know, do what you know is best. Do what you know is the law. Okay? It's not a problem to wear a vest. It's really not. And in this particular case, this warehouse was dark. It had a very, very dark roof, or dark ceiling, hasn't been painted yet, dim lighting, and a lot of shadows. And guys are walking around in black, navy blue, green, dark colors. Wearing this color will help you stand out for that forklift, especially with the brickie driving around. Or that, he was a mechanical guy, driving his van, his box van, around inside, which, again, leads to a whole other problem with why is there a gas-operated vehicle inside, not propane. You know what I mean? So when the Ministry of Labour shows up on your site, and by the way, to the supervisor, why is the Ministry of Labour on your site 3 times? What are you doing wrong that he keeps coming back? All right, so, excuse me. So if the ministry shows up, if that OSHA guy shows up, that government official shows up, and they don't pick on the littler things, they're probably looking at killer contraventions. All right? If I mention to you that extension ladder, that half of a hole, doesn't meet the requirement for access, don't argue with me. All right? Ask a question and I can define it for you, absolutely. But half of a hole is not the whole ladder. And the ladder wasn't tall enough because it's got to be 3 rungs, 3 feet, 900 millimeters above the landing on that scaffold. I don't make this stuff up. If it's too short, it's too short. And because, again, the government official didn't say anything, doesn't mean it's legal. Doesn't mean that it's right. I am really tired of hearing both those excuses. Well, the Ministry of Labour guys said I could, which is complete horse crap, because they would never do that, because they're not there to tell you how to do the job. They're there to make sure that you do it safely and by requirement. Or the government or the Ministry of Labour guy didn't say nothing about it. That's not the point. It's 2020. Supervisors, you need to know. If you don't know by now that you need to know what the Green Book says, then perhaps you should not be named a competent supervisor, because it actually tells you what a competent supervisor is. And part of competency is knowing what the law is, okay? It's that simple. And as a safety guy, it gets a little frustrating hearing these piss-ass excuses as to why you don't want to comply. All right? So, At the end of the day, just because that government official doesn't mention it does not mean that you don't have to do it. It does not mean that it's not in the book. So when a safety professional comes by, because you know what? At the end of the day, in Ontario anyway, safety professionals, we outnumber the Ministry of Labor inspectors. There's 430 plus in the province of Ontario, and there's 800,000 plus places of employment. So there's no way that Ministry of Labor can go and visit every site. Okay, so that's the deal. Just because they don't say it does not mean that it's not a requirement. All right? Thank you.